My mother says that I was the most wanted child ever. She spent 4 years trying to have me, and I was just a delight. Slobbered on us all the time. She told us we were the best, we were the greatest, we could do anything, we could go anywhere, we could be anybody. My daddy worked all the time. When I was about 10, my mama told me my daddy was an alcoholic. I didn't know this. We lived out in the country. Everybody drank beer. And so the insanity in my home began. Not a beer my daddy ever drank ever bothered me. Never. My mama was crazy. And I spoke one time, and she was here to hear me speak. And made her mad, but I think she forgave me finally for it. But, my mama did the best she could with what she had. And on any given day, that's what we're doing. It's just the best we can with what we have. My mama didn't have a program, antidepressants and all that. Well, they didn't have that. She just dealt with it the best she could. And the best she could was, fussing, screaming, hollering, cussing, dragging us in the middle of it. And she didn't know that all that was shaping me to become who I would become, which is a fabulous codependent and enabler. I was the only girl and the oldest, so I was in charge. And I still feel like I am. Most of my childhood was really good. My mama grew up very privileged, and my father grew up eating pigeons if they wanted meat. So they kind of balanced each other out. And Christmas was really good, but we didn't go over the top. I didn't have everything I wanted, but I had a lot. And I got to be a teenager. And I think Clyde says it, free will and driver's license. And I've never done drugs in my whole life. Never smoked weed, none of that. Now that's hard to believe, but I'm standing up here in front of God and everybody telling y'all I ain't never done it. And I've drank, but I didn't do any drugs. I was around some people smoking some pot one time, and they started talking about there was this frog they were going to go hunt, and if you licked it, you got real high. And I thought, I don't want anything that's going to make licking a frog sound good. So I decided to stay away from that. I got pregnant at 16. Nobody here knows him. Anyway, he was an addict, and he was an alcoholic, and I didn't really know it at the time, but I got pregnant. And in 1987, when you got pregnant, you got married. Even I was almost 17. I like to say that because 16 sounds so horrible now that I'm the age I am. And I got married. And a few months after I got married, I was 5 months pregnant, and I lost that baby. And my mama wanted me to wait. My mama kept telling me, please wait till after the baby's born. I never would have married this man if I had not have been pregnant. And somebody said, well, you got your daughter out of him. And I was like, I'd had another child. I wouldn't have known this child because he was a piece of work. I stayed married to him for 10 years. And this is where it gets kind of good. Before I was divorced, I met a man. He was so cute. And I began an affair. He was not divorced. And I think that the best I can figure went on for about 2 years. And I would like to stand up here and tell y'all, don't do it. And I will tell y'all, don't do it. But it was so much fun. It really was. I have since, repented for that. And I even went to his ex-wife and made amends to her through this program. But it was fun sneaking around. I mean, y'all looking at me like I got 3 heads, but y'all know what sneaking around is like? And, he had been married twice before. And I was the one that was going to save him. I was the one that was going to fix him because he loved me different than he loved them. And I could love him better than they didn't understand him. Bless his heart. Nobody understood him. His mother told me one time that I was her son's saving grace. And you might as well have thought you gave me a rope. I thought I was a cowboy then. I set out to fix him for real. If his mother told me I was his saving grace, I had to be. Now, he was in prison when he got divorced from his wife. And when he come home the 1st of September. We got married the 1st of October. By the 1st of November, he was back on dope. And I was in for a ride that I had no idea what I was fixing to go, where he was fixing to take me, where addiction was fixing to take me and us. It was 4 years before he would find recovery. And in those 4 years, I became the best enabler, the best codependent you have ever seen. I enabled. I would call jobs. I would fix messes. I would find money. I would borrow money. I would, whatever I had to do to make it right. I would fix him coffee every morning. And I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it because maybe he would be in a good enough mood when he left the house, he would come home that night. Some of it's funny. I've been shot at looking for him. I've been in high-speed car chases with him. A couple of them I won. Been in car crashes with him. I literally hit him in a truck that we had owned 2 weeks and not even bought a tag for. I did $10,000 worth of damage to the truck. He says I tried to kill him. I put on brakes. Skid marks was about that long. Just the craziness. I've been in dope houses. I've been in places in Middle Georgia that most people do not even know exist. I have felt like I have looked straight into the devil's eyes. And I got really good at finding him. And he would get better at hiding, and I'd get better at finding him. And this just went on until I had had enough. And so one day, I walked into the psychiatric center at the Coliseum. And they said, "Miss Haynes, if we let you go, will you hurt yourself or somebody else?" And I said, "Yes." I mean, I wasn't going to hurt me. If something ever happens to me, y'all, it was never suicide. Y'all check under my fingernails for DNA, because I ain't doing that. But I probably would have killed him. When you live in active alcoholism and addiction, everything that about me was consumed about him. Everything. His mood was my mood. If he was mad, I was mad. If he was happy, I was happy. If it was a good day, then I had a good day. If it was a bad day, I had a bad day. And I couldn't come out of it. And when I went to the Coliseum, I stayed down there about 7 days. He had no idea. He was on a dope run, and he had no idea that I had even been down there. I was done and home before he ever came back to light. I was introduced to Al-Anon. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in Al-Anon before, but I was introduced to Al-Anon, and I went. And these pitiful people were sitting around talking. And they said something about being powerless. And I wasn't ready to be powerless. I didn't like it. And so I went for a little while, and then I backed off. And still continued to try to fix him, to try to win him over, to try to say the right things, the right words. And nothing I tried worked. Nothing. So if any of you are sitting here today thinking that you're going to try to talk your way into or convince them or make them do what you want them to do, I have sat in room with thousands of other women over the years, and there is nothing left to try. It is all on them. It had nothing to do with me. And they told me later on in the program, they told me that it was not personal. And that was the hardest thing for me to realize, was that it wasn't personal. It had nothing to do with me. But I'm thinking that it does, because I'm thinking that I'm more important than I am, I guess. He had been gone about a week. And when he come home, he was on the front porch wrapped in a moving blanket, and he was asleep. And I remember just kicking him, waking him up. And I told him to get in the house, because the daughter, because that was one of my jobs, is to keep the children from knowing anything. They must have thought he was a working fool, because he would come home after they went to bed, and he would leave before they got up in the morning. And I hadn't even seen him at all. And so I told him to get in the house before the youngest baby got up and saw it. And I told him I just was done. I said, you see over there, I said, this is all your stuff. It's in a boxes. I said, figure it out. I'm coming home for lunch. I have it figured out. And, never doubt when they say they want to go back to treatment, because you never know when is that time. Because, see, I think the other times he went to appease people, to get people off his back, to maybe stay out of jail, I don't know. But he went this time, and out of his mouth, for him, for him. And he had to do what he had to do, regardless as if I was going to be there when he got through or not. And so he went. Now this is a man that I packed his stuff and wasn't going to let him stay. But when he went to treatment, they told me I had to go to Al-Anon. I was like, I've been to Al-Anon. And I started going. And I had to go, and I had to get a paper signed so I could see him. And they were, they're powerless and they're this, and I didn't want to hear any of that. I hated being powerless. I hated it. For the first year in a program, I fought for 6 months. I fought being powerless, and it probably could have saved me a little time. I've got somebody here that sat in those meetings with me. She knows that I was not the easiest nut to crack in a program like that. And he, you couldn't see him in treatment for 3 weeks. And y'all, when I walked up on this man after 3 weeks, I was looking at a man that I had never seen before. This was not the same man that I had married or knew or anything. He looked totally different. I still had some reservations because, every time he said, I'm not going to do this anymore, he meant it. And I believed him every time, and it hurt just as bad every single time. And I don't think he ever said, I'm not going to do this anymore. He just looked different. And I never wanted an amend from Clyde. I wanted him to do different. I love you and I'm sorry are the 5 most abused words in the English language. And they generally go together. And I was sick of hearing I'm sorry. I love you, I'm sorry, I love you. They almost didn't have any meaning anymore. But he got out of treatment. And he was gung-ho on meetings. And so was I. That's what a good little codependent does. Most of the time I went to meetings with him so I could keep an eye on him and what he was doing. Because he had to be, I had babysat him for so many years that I didn't know any other way. And so in recovery, I don't know exactly when my bottom was. I don't know that I have hit a bottom. I think I have. I don't know exactly how that worked for me. I just know that I started listening to these people, at these meetings. And they started saying stuff, and it started making sense to me. And I started applying it to myself and trying to take the experience that others had. And you know, there's a saying, you take what you like and leave the rest. And that's what I did. I took what I thought I could use, and I left the rest there. And I started applying it to my life. And I would love to tell y'all that it was all rainbows and fluffiness. That was the hardest year of my life because, see, I had a role in our marriage. Can I get something to drink since I knocked mine down? I had a role in our marriage. I was chaos coordinator. I actually bought me a shirt a couple weeks ago that says chaos coordinator. I fixed everything. Didn't matter what was broke, I fixed it. And that was my role. That's what I did. And when he got sober and he started doing his own thing and fixing his own messes, I didn't have a role anymore. There was no chaos. There was nothing for me to fix. There was nothing for me to do. And I lost that role of what I was. Thank you, babe. I just lost that role. I even would create chaos. I would create little chaos, little fires to put out, because that's what I did. I stuck it out, though, and I learned. And I learned from these people. And I learned silly little stuff at first because I was completely, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know a lot of things about myself. So I people would say that, I say this all the time. This lady told me one night in a meeting, she said, "Baby, you're shooting at too many bunnies." What? She said, "We're all equipped. We come here with so many bullets. And if you keep shooting at bunnies, one day there's going to be a bear. You ain't going to have no bullets." She says, "So save your bullets for the bears." And y'all, that was like heaven had opened up and God himself had said that. That was the first thing I remember wrapping my mind around. And so, I mean, for a week it was like bunny, bunny, bunny. Oh, that might be a bear, bunny. But I mean, that's how I'll judge things. I have a sign hanging in my kitchen that says, "Save your bullets for the bears." I said this the other Wednesday night, and Jessica's like, but what I had done in being a codependent was I placed my well-being, everything about me, into the hands of a sick person. I just gave everything about me to him and said, "Here, do with it what you want to." And y'all don't do that. Don't do that. A sick person cannot help take care of you. A sick person cannot make you well. A sick person cannot make you happy. When you put all of that weight, your happiness, your well-being, your everything on the shoulders of another human being, you are crippling them. It is nobody's job to make me whole but my own. It is nobody's job to make me happy. And that's what I done. I gave everything about myself over to him to just run with. It was just a little playground. He could do what he wanted to. And my mother, y'all, my mother in the beginning, she said that Clyde Haynes was a mama's worst nightmare. She said she didn't want she didn't want him to die. She just wanted him to go away, just far, far away. And after a few years, my mother really, really came to love Clyde. And she, I don't know why I said that. I just thought of that. But she really came to love Clyde. And I guess it was after he got sober, I think. She didn't like him much at all when he was drinking. Anyway, back on track. That was a rabbit hole. I learned in the program about boundaries. Learned what boundaries was. I learned they wasn't walls, they were boundaries. And it didn't matter how you felt about my boundaries, they were my boundaries. If you didn't like them, can't help you. That's something you need to deal with in your program. Balance. Balance was a thing. I have to find balance on everything. I don't know about anybody else, but I am either up here or I'm up here. I'm either all in, 100%, can't sleep, or I don't give a crap about it. And there's, if I can swing about this much in the middle, not just right here, but if I can swing a little bit, I've spent all these years trying to find balance, and I still struggle with finding balance. At least I'm aware of it now. I finally accepted that I was powerless. And I've tried to find it. I've got it wrote down in one of my books, the night that it hit me that I was powerless. And it was like something that you already should have learned, but you listen and you hear it for so long, and then all of a sudden you realize what it really means. Like one day at a time. I was 10 years in a program before one day at a time. It was like the light went off, and I knew what that meant. Our lives was almost perfect. I may get upset. And y'all, I don't cry, especially in public. I'm an ugly crier. We went to meetings. We talked to program people. We hung out with program people. That is all we done. We would leave family events to go to meetings. And then he started to slack off. And I don't know how long it was. He had some things happen. I'm thinking it's probably 8 or 10 months that I watched. You ever watched a movie and knew what was going to happen? It's like I'm watching a movie. And I say it like this a lot, that it's like Clyde was on the train tracks. And the train's coming, and it's loud. And he can't hear it. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. And he can't hear me. He relapsed. And I have never had anything hurt as bad as that. I could not, you're not supposed to do that. For a few days, I couldn't do anything. I literally had people come and pick me up out of my living room floor. And I will tell y'all something funny. One of them, bless her heart, she had breast cancer. And she had her breast removed. She had prosthetics. And I remember, because, everything's got to be funny. And I remember laying there crying, and all of a sudden I was like, they do feel real. That just popped in my mind, but I remember they do feel real, and we all started laughing, and that kind of helped me. And, in my program, the enabling stopped. That was one of the first things that I could stop. And in the relapse, I realized that I was still the best codependent. My world was so enmeshed with his that him relapsing almost took me out. And y'all heard him speak a couple weeks ago. The relapse lasted 4 years. And the way he described it to me is that it keeps growing. Even though you're not feeding it, it keeps growing. So when you feed it again, it takes way more. And within 1 day of him relapsing, it was worse than it had ever been. The amount, whatever, it was just worse. We divorced. There was a lot of debt. There was a bankruptcy in the first go around. There was a bankruptcy this time. He went to more treatment. He went to more in-house. He would go to these treatment places and detox and, look, when people from detox see you in public and know your whole name, dang. They would see Clyde. He would go to these treatment. There was one he was in, and they thought he should be president because he knew everything. He was just the best ever, anyway. This time that when during the relapse, I did not go looking for him like I had in the past. I would go and be out all night and come back home and get a shower and go to work and work all day. I didn't do all that during this relapse. I guess I let it happen. I guess I had to stop the crazy on my end at some point. Not that I didn't, cry and kick and scream, and it was the worst time. The worst time, all 4 years. We divorced. We were never really apart, but we divorced. And I finally one night, I prayed, and I prayed for God to take him. I prayed that if he was through with God, if God was through with him down here, if he had done nothing else, and he was not supposed to do anything else, for God to please take him. He was tired. I was tired. The kids were tired. His parents were tired. Take him. And it is like, as good as I'm standing here talking to y'all today, God said to me, he will not die. I heard it as plain as day. And in that moment, I gave him back to God. That was something that the codependent Lori didn't want to do, because I guess there was still a little part of me that thought he could love me enough to quit, or I could get him to quit, or get him to just see. I wanted him one day to go, I am so sorry. I did not realize this was hurting you. I think I will quit. And that never happened. But I turned him over, and I prayed step 11. And that's all I could do. God loved him more than I did. And it took another year, I would say, before the end came. And when the end came, whoever was here heard him, it was prison. And, the first thing that I'm thinking is, yay, jail. Praise the Lord, I can go to sleep. Because the people who live in my world, when they're out there, we don't know. Any minute we're going to get a phone call from sheriff, morgue, whoever. And I thought, if I go to sleep, I'm so tired, I may not hear the phone. What if I don't hear the phone? What if I don't hear it and can't go get him, or can't do whatever it is that, I need to do? And so he went to jail, and I slept a lot. I'm still sleeping. And I was reading. I would occasionally pick up my Bible. We were always in church. I was a treasurer in a church, and I wrote out all the checks, and I'd done this. And there was one time where it seemed like everything was going kind of good, and we got back in church, and all of a sudden, it just was horrible again. So my decision is we just won't go back to church. If the devil is after him, we'll just be good. We just won't go to church. We really won't say a lot about God. We'll just hang out at home. We'll still be children of God, but maybe we can, psych the devil out. I don't know, y'all. In my thinking, That was a thinking. In my thinking, especially during the last relapse, I had his funeral planned in my mind. I knew how I was going to bury him. I knew who was going to sing. I knew what I was going to put him in. I knew everything. That's a lot to keep in your mind at all times. Is how you're going to bury somebody that you love. And I have grieved for somebody who is dead, and I have grieved for somebody who is alive. And the difference is night and day. I had to let God have him. God had to fix it. It was so much bigger than me. It was so much bigger than him. And he went to prison. And I would visit. When he was in Jones County, I went pretty much every week. And, they said 10 do 3. And so the lawyer said that he would probably only do a third of that, which is a year. So I'm thinking, well, he'll do a year. And then it gets close to the year, and it's like an overwhelming thought that I had is that God's not going to let him out in a year. I was thinking the whole time, 1. That's what I was thinking. That's what the lawyer said. And that's not what happened. God kept him 3 years. And he actually moved him up here to Macon and then moved him back to Reedsville to give him one more little dose of it before he let him out. And I had to be okay. When it dawned on me that they was going to keep him the whole time, I had to be okay with that. I had to make myself okay with that. Because, we say, oh, God, your will be done. And we already think in our minds what God's will ought to be. And so when that don't happen, then we're mad with God. When it was always going to be God's will, and we just thought we knew what God's will might be, and none of us really know. Because I was okay with a year. I was not okay with 3. But I found the strength to get okay with 3. Now, while he's in prison, my mama gets sick. And God is so good. Because he knew that if Clyde was still home, he would be up to whatever he was up to. And I would have to take care of my mother and my father and all the stuff that I was doing, plus deal with him. So God put him in Johnson State Prison. Praise the Lord. I used to leave the prison seeing him, and the girls that were behind me would be like, this place, this is so stupid. And I was just like, man, I praise God for this place every day. I'm so glad he's here. But God put him down there because God knew I was going to need to focus 100% on my mother. And, my mother went to Al-Anon a little bit. And she had enough Al-Anon to be dangerous. She, on February the 10th, 2014, I had to bury my mama. And people would say, oh, I know you wish Clyde was here. And I would say, no, I don't. Because God was dealing with him and he was dealing with me too. God put many, many people in my life at that time that surrounded me and took care of me. And although I was so sad, I was at peace when my mama died, and I credit a program for having that peace. Because I can't imagine in the state that I was in having to deal with that too. And all of it be swirling in my head. Y'all know those little balls y'all get and you bounce them, and the more they bounce, the faster they get. I had about 20 of them at one time, all the time, going through my mind. I could beat a problem to death. And then the same year in September, my grandmother died. Now, it was different with my grandmother. She was 99. She just laid down and went to bed, and that was it. I mean, everybody wants to go like that. But I had to do all of this without a mate. But like I said, God put a whole bunch of people in my life that surrounded me and held me up when I could not hold myself. Because I was still as dependent on Clyde as I ever was. But when God sent him away, God worked on me, and I figured a lot of things out. There's a strength in me that I did not realize that I had. And in that moment, I was in my living room and I realized that the codependency was broken, that God took that. I asked him and he took that. And so I started seeing things a little bit different. From that moment on. And it has been such a long, hard road to get to where I am now. But I prayed a lot, and I worked the steps, and I went to meetings, and that's what happened. It's not overnight. It's not a quick fix. You're not going to come in here in the codependency group and I'm going to give you some little cliche or little cheesy saying for you to go home and fix your loved one. The pain don't go away overnight. Sometimes the pain may never go away. I work the steps every day. I work them to the best of my ability every day. Some days I have a lot, y'all, and some days I have very little to deal with. I take my inventory instead of other people's now. I have a little saying I say all the time: we tend to see in others what we do not like in ourselves. And sometimes other people are the best judge of me, because I look at how other people are acting and I think, okay, do I do that? So then I turn it to me, and because I can't do anything about how anybody else acts. I mean, if I could have, I tell people all the time, if I could have, I would be on stage somewhere giving y'all the magic words, and I would fly back to my private island, but I didn't have them. I always had God in our house. It was a little G God. That's what I learned. He was a little G God, and he run everything. And while he was gone, I let a big G God, I let real God take over. And he did the same thing in prison. And it is probably the best it's ever been. I mean, he still gets on my nerves. He's got a man cold now, and y'all pray for him. He may not make it. Oh Lord. He was coughing the other night on me, and I'm like, you're coughing your cooties on me. And then I woke up the other morning, and I'm like, I don't feel good. He's like, well, suck it up like me and go to work anyway. I'm like, with the help of CR and other programs, I've talked a lot about Al-Anon tonight, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The steps are the steps, whether you learn them in CR, whether you learn them in Al-Anon. In Al-Anon, it was always a God of our understanding. And the group I went to, I guess, was really great because we could just say God. And it was okay. And the way I got around that, because, I'm just like that, I would say, well, I was reading this book. It's been on the bestseller list for like ever. And it was written by this guy. And in his book, he says, and I would quote scripture, and they would all laugh. But there's so much more I would love to stand up here and tell y'all about a program. I'm out of time. Please come. Please stay. Please share. You know, and just when you think it's getting better and you're probably better and you can slack off, you probably need to go to a few more meetings a week. You probably need to do double time. You know, because you be careful where you stand, because you might be sinking. I hope something that you heard here tonight, I don't know how much sense it made to y'all, but it's my story. It's just crazy. I hope something you heard here tonight maybe will give you a little inspiration to maybe figure out some things about yourself. There's a women's step meeting on Monday nights at 6:30. We meet here at the church. Would love to have y'all. We just started it last week, so there's still time for you to come. The steps is where you learn about yourself. I talked a lot about Clyde, but I don't have really a story without him. I had to kind of give y'all some background. My excuse on why I'm crazy. I found this in Clyde's book. He fussed at me when I got here because I left his notebook out of his bag. It's a description of a codependent, because most people don't know if they're codependent or not. My feelings about who I am stem from being loved by you. My good feelings about who I stem from receiving approval from you. My mental attention is focused on pleasing you. My mental attention is focused on protecting you. My own hobbies and interests are put aside. My time is spent sharing your interest in your hobbies. You know, in the movie Runaway Bride, anybody seen that movie? She don't know how she likes her eggs. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Some of us have been chameleons for so long, blending in to whatever it is or whoever it is. We don't even know how I like our eggs. You know, one of the last times I spoke, I asked, go home and find out how you like your eggs. I am not aware of how I feel, but I am aware of how you feel. I used to send the kids in to see how he looked in the mornings, to see what kind of day we were going to have. The dreams I have for my future are linked directly to you. My fear of anger from you determines what I say or do. I use giving as a way of feeling safe in a relationship. I put my values aside in order to connect with you. We all come with a moral line. We have a moral compass. When you pass that moral line to please somebody else, you've gone too far. I went way too far. The quality of my life is in direct relation to the quality of yours. If any of these sound, and there's a whole bunch more, if any of those sound like you, or even somebody you know, please stay for the codependency group. Please start the steps. It will not, and I repeat, it will not get better until something changes. Until you change. Thanks.